Just starting out in video? Definitely consider getting this lens first.
Yeah.
So in the last video, I discussed why I thought that the nifty 50mm f1.8 lens should be the first lens that you should choose if you just started out in photography. So I thought I'd make this into a bit of a series, and I thought I'd make another video about which lens should be the first video lens. So here we are. So I'm trying to make this mini series of videos so that they're not brand specific. So it doesn't matter which camera system you're using, this video should still be for you. Hopefully anyway. So like the last video, choosing your first lens, I mean, it's a minefield. Minefield? No, minefield. I always get that confused. Anyway, it's a minefield, honestly. It can be very, very daunting, very, very intimidating. You have no idea what to go for and what to choose. So you rely on silly little YouTubers like us to make these great and informative reviews or videos, whatever you want to call them, to hopefully inspire your decision. But hey, what do I know? Sorry, I've also got a bit of a cold, and I thought if I don't film this today, I'll never film this, because next weekend I've got a wedding. Oh, honestly, I'm too busy. I'm too busy doing other things that aren't this channel, which is really, really irritating. Anyway, where was I? Choosing your first lens when you're on a budget can be the most difficult decision you'll ever make in your life. Tad bit dramatic, but you get what I mean. So if you're new to video, hopefully this video will help answer any questions that you might have and hopefully make that decision that little bit easier. Now, there are actually two lenses that I'd recommend. However, it depends on your circumstances and your requirements as to which one is going to be the best one for you. So if you want to find out what that second one is, stick around until the end and I'll let you know. But for now, I'm going to give you 5 reasons why I think the 24-105 f4 lens should be the first one that you choose when you're just starting out in video. Let's go. Now, there is one thing I'm going to have to mention before I go any further that I failed to mention, or I failed to go into detail about in my last video, and that's whether or not you're shooting full frame or if you're shooting on a crop sensor body, because it's definitely going to have an impact on how the lens performs in terms of low light performance, depth of field, and also focal length. So for me, I'd still recommend this lens for both systems, whether or not it's crop or full frame, because they can work together. So if you decide to upgrade to full frame, you can take that lens with you. Whereas if you just bought crop sensor lenses and then decided to upgrade to full frame, you're stuck with all your crop sensor lenses that can't really work properly on a full frame camera. So what do? You may as well just buy full frame lenses to begin with, and then, you know, it doesn't matter, you can buy both cameras. Anyway, I've never understood that, so I just wanted to get that out of the way. So reason number 1 is focal range. The 24-105 is like a tried and tested focal range. It's been around for what feels like centuries. Like I said before, it's available on every single system. If you're shooting Canon, if you're shooting Nikon, if you're shooting Lumix, Sony, doesn't really matter. There is going to be a 24-105 in that system. And because it's such a wide focal range, it means it's so versatile and you can use it in almost any situation, which makes it ideal for that first lens. So 24mm is wide enough for 90% of all scenarios. So it makes it great for landscape photography, if you're deciding to do weddings, if you're doing real estate, if you're vlogging, whatever it may be. 24mm is as wide as you'll probably ever need to go, and if you need to go wider than that, then later on you can buy yourself a wide angle lens. But for now, 24-105 is definitely going to have most scenarios covered. And 105, that's almost telephoto range. So if you want to zoom in while you're doing that landscape and you want to get a tight shot, you've got it. If you want to do a close-up, you've got it. And as a rule of thumb, whenever you're filming something, you want to get 3 shots of the same thing. So you want a nice wide establishing shot, and then you kind of want a mid shot, and then you want a tight shot, which means that you can get all 3 of those with this lens without even taking the lens off and changing it or even moving. And a little pro tip, if you're shooting on a crop body, obviously 24mm is going to be like 35. So if you're kind of like, oh, I wish it was a little bit wider, 35 is a little bit too tight for me, I might have to upgrade to a full frame body. When you do upgrade, you can at least take this lens with you, which will give you a true 24mm. However, you could actually keep that crop sensor body as well, get yourself a 16-35, and then if you put the 16-35 on your full frame camera and keep this 24-105 on your crop sensor camera, you've kind of got a full range from 16 to 150mm. If you think about it, on the full frame you've got 16-35, and then on the crop sensor you'll have 24, which will be 35, all the way up to 105, which will be like 150. So you've got 16 to 150. Boom, there's a pro tip for you. So yeah, if you're shooting like weddings or something by then, you know, having a crop sensor and a full frame with a 16-35 and 24-105 kind of got all bases covered. I mean, if that's not a pro tip and worth the thumbs up, I don't know what is. Reason number 2 is aperture. Now, f4 isn't the fastest in the world, and what I mean by that is it's not the best in low light, and f2.8 would be better. However, that comes with a price. of size, weight and cost. But f4 is still pretty good, and especially when it comes to video, because with this lens it's f4 from 24 all the way up to 105. So that means that your exposure is not going to change when you're zooming in and out like you are when you've got one of these cheaper sort of kit zoom lenses that go from f3.5 to f6.3. So when you're down at 24mm it's going to be f3.5, and then when you zoom in to 105 for example, it might be f6.3 or 200mm, whatever it is. It's going to be f6.3, which is going to make your image darker. And like I said in my last video, when you're just starting out, the last thing you want to have to worry about is why is my image getting darker as I zoom in, because it can be very, very confusing, and you don't want to have to keep re-exposing your image because you want that to be a part of your shot. You don't want the shot to get darker as you zoom in and out. You want it to remain at a constant exposure, because unlike photography, you don't have the complete exposure triangle at your fingertips. Like photography, you can just decide to change the aperture, the shutter speed, the ISO willy-nilly and do whatever you want, whereas video, you kind of need to stick to the rules. So if you're sticking to the 180-degree shutter rule, for example, then that means that your shutter speed is pretty much fixed for the entire time that you're shooting. You can't change it. ISO, usually they've got a base ISO. If you're shooting log, which you might do eventually, you've got a base ISO, which means you're going to get the cleanest image, which is usually at a low end like 640 or 6000 if you're lucky and you've got dual ISO like this camera does. So that's the ISO out of the window. So what's left? Aperture. And if your aperture is going to change as you're zooming in and out, if you've got one of these variable aperture lenses that goes from like 18 to 200mm, then at 18mm it might be 3.5, but then at 200mm it might be 7.1. And as you zoom in, your image is just going to get darker because you don't want to change your ISO, because that's just going to make it even more noisy, and you can't change your shutter speed because that'll affect how blurry everything is. It's an absolute nightmare. So the other alternative is to then get a variable ND, stick that on the front and mess with that the whole time, which is really annoying. So yeah, having an f4 aperture, which is constant throughout the entire focal range, is worth its weight in gold if you ask me. So yeah, reason number 2 is aperture. I think I got that point across. Reason number 3, hopefully this one doesn't take that long, is image stabilization, because typically these lenses, the 24 to 105s, have image stabilization built in, which when paired with a camera with built-in stabilization as well, gives you something called dual IS, which is going to make your shots even more stable. Now, not all cameras have image stabilization built in. If you come for an R8, unlucky. So if you have this lens, at least you're going to get some form of optical stabilization rather than electronic stabilization. Now, another trend with camera manufacturers these days is to edge towards electronic stabilization, but that does incur quite a bit of a crop, usually about 10%. So at 24mm, you're going to end up at like 28 to 30mm, which might be okay, but in some scenarios, it's just not going to be wide enough. So having the option to have added image stabilization in your lens, especially when paired with the camera as well, means that you don't always have to use that active electronic stabilization. So yeah, reason number 3 is image stabilization built in. So reason number 4 is these are professional grade lenses, which means that you're going to get some of the best optical glass that's available in the system that you bought into. So for Canon, that's the L series lenses. For Sony, you've got the G and the GM. For Panasonic, you've got the S and the S Pro. Nikon, I don't know what you're doing. I have no idea. Oh, I keep talking crap about Nikon. I don't mean it. I've just no experience with Nikon. I'm a Canon shooter originally, you see, and there was a big Canon Nikon rivalry to begin with, and that's where I think I get it from. I don't really care. Shoot whatever you want to shoot. But yeah, these are professional lenses, which means that you'll be able to grow with them. You won't just then decide to replace it later on. They're typically extremely well built, weather sealed, excellent image quality, really good at handling things like chromatic aberration and glare and flare and all those things. But they also have little additional extras, such as switches. Like you've got a switch for optical stabilization on and off, you've got your manual focus to autofocus switches, you've also got a lock one on this one, you sometimes have a little custom button. But also, one of the biggest positives about these lenses are that they usually have some form of macro capability. Now, they're not like one-to-one macro, but they've got such a narrow focusing distance, short focusing distance, which means you can get really close to your subject, which allows for more dynamic, interesting shots. And that's what we want. We want to have as much versatility as we can out of the lens that's probably going to be on our camera 99% of the time, because when you shoot video, you don't want to be taking your camera lens on and off. You ideally just want one run and gun. So yeah, if you're just starting out and then later on down the line you're like, I know, I won't mind earning a little bit of money here and doing a few professional gigs, then you're not going to fall short with this lens in your kit. Whereas if you decided to go for something like one of those variable aperture zooms, like a 18-200, you'll end up replacing it, and you'll end up either buying one of these, which means that you will just waste money and waste time anyway, or going for something like an f2.8 version. So you may as well just go for this to begin with, because they are excellent lenses offering excellent image quality with premium build quality at an affordable cost, which brings me on nicely to the next reason, which is reason number 5, price. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that this lens is cheap, because it is far from cheap. In fact, it is pretty damn expensive. However, for what you get compared to something like the 24-70 f2.8 versions like the G Master or the S Pro, it's actually a pretty damn good bargain. Now, I did say if you got to the end of the video, which if you have, give yourself a pat on the back, I would give you an alternative option to this lens. Now, that lens is the 24-70 f2.8, and I don't mean the native brand 24-70 f2.8. By that I mean the GM, the L, or the S Pro. I mean something like a Sigma or a Tamron, the 24-70 versions of those, which are 2.8. They're usually a very similar cost to these. F2.8 obviously is going to be a little bit better in low light. It's going to give you a little bit better shallow depth of field. However, I still feel that the 24-105 is going to be better for video. If this was photography, it'd be a little bit of a different ball game. But for video, I feel that the added features that you get from this will definitely outweigh the additional features that you get out of the Sigma. So 70-105. Having that extra focal range is definitely going to be more beneficial. Plus, having the image stabilization built in, the extra little macro capabilities. And this might just be me, but I feel that third-party lenses can be a little bit plasticky, a little bit cheap, and they weather a little bit easier. Plus, the autofocus. The autofocus in a native branded lens is going to be far better than something like the Sigma. I mean, it's pretty close, but you're going to get all those firmware updates. You're going to get all those added little features that the company decides to put into them, such as Sony, for example, focus breathing compensation. You won't get that in a Sigma lens, but if it was the Sony lens, then you will get that added feature built in. So it's little things like that. I just feel like third-party lenses, not really for me. And also, for some reason, correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't make a 24-105 in any third-party company. Like, why not? Like, 24-105 has been going for centuries, and there isn't a Tamron one, there isn't a Sigma one, there isn't a Samyang one. I mean, not that I've come across anyway. So I don't know what the alternative would be. I find that 24-105 is very niche, but it's not, if you get what I mean. So it's niche as in, like, it's just the camera manufacturers are the only people that make them. I don't know why. Anyway, I'd love to hear from you. Let me know what you think. So that's it from me. As I said, it is just my opinion. Just because I'm putting this video out on YouTube does not mean that I am right and you are wrong. Does it? No, it doesn't. I'm not setting the golden rule here. You decide on what's best for you. Watch more videos, watch more YouTubers, try and sell you other stuff. But yeah, I'm not making you buy this lens. I'm just giving you my opinion on why I feel this would be the best lens for you to get first. But it is my opinion from experience. I have experienced both this 24-105 lens, the 24-70s, and all those variable aperture lenses in between. And I honestly do feel that the 24-105 would be better suited for anybody who's just starting out in video, because it just ticks all the boxes. Plus, if you're going from crop sensor and you're going to eventually upgrade to full frame, because why wouldn't you, then you can take it with you. It will work on that, and then you won't waste all your money and have to sell that and buy another one. It saves you so much time and money. So that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you want to see more. Hit the bell, all those nice things that will put a smile on my face. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Also, I'm sorry if I was sniffling, but I had a bit of a cold and it's just about gone. My wife is out for the night, so that means I could film this video in a bit of peace, because I don't like doing it when she's around. And next weekend I'm busy and I can't film it, so it's going to be like another week for me to bring out this video, and I feel that I'm slacking. So I really need to get it out, but I've got a bunged nose. I probably sound like a horse. So yeah, I apologise for that. So, you know, even though I've got flu, man flu, still make these videos for you. Does anybody else think that tea tastes better in a china cup? Oh, I am tired.
Yeah. Let's go. We just gotta go hard. I go the